Well, hello everybody. I'm glad you joined us here tonight at Heritage Hope at our evening roundtable. We're going to give everybody just a few minutes to check in with us real quick. Oh, there we are. Well, I can see us. And we're going to keep an eye on the postings. If anybody has any questions for Pastor or for me, I don't know if you want to ask me anything, like where to get this snazzy shirt at. You can ask me that or something. But if you have any questions for Pastor about church or anything else, you can go ahead and post those or text them on in, and we'll keep an eye on that and try to answer them as they come in as well. We're going to, like I said, we're going to give a few minutes here for everybody to jump on, but we just want to take some time tonight and kind of give a state of the church address. Pastor wanted to talk a little bit about condition of the church and what's going on. We had a few questions to ask him and see if he can keep up with us tonight. But we're sure glad that you're joining us here. I know Pastor's glad for it. And we're, of course, sending out our best wishes and prayers to those that are still sick and dealing with this COVID stuff and the after effects of it. There were so many of us that were affected through the holiday time, Christmas time, and so forth. It's been a little bit rough. Some of us, such as myself, was quarantined. Man, even Belinda made me stay upstairs by myself. You know, she tested positive, and she made me stay by myself upstairs. All I could eat was sandwiches about that tall that she slide under the door. You know, so that's not pretty. That's pretty bad.
Well, I found out in my experience in quarantine that people talk about, well, maybe get a little time off and rest and do nothing. But I'll tell you, it was one of the most boring times.
Yeah.
And I wasn't as sick as a lot of people, but one of the most boring times. And while you mentioned that, Gabe, we wanted to pray tonight, and this be a matter of prayer. Our pastor at Community Harvest, Brother Larry Perkins, was diagnosed with COVID pneumonia, and they didn't have a room at the hospital for him, and so he had to go back home, is my understanding and everything. And so I haven't got a report on him today, but let's continue in prayer. And then I was just sharing with you a while ago about the man down in my home area. His wife has covered me in prayer for the whole time I've been saved as minister. And his son pastors one of our churches in that area there, and had never been saved. And he got tested positive for COVID, had to take him to the hospital, and he needs prayer. But he gave his heart to the Lord last night. So there's still some good things happening out there, in spite of everything. And as far as I know, our church is. We were blessed. We had some people that had a rough time, but overall, it wasn't as bad as I was afraid it would be. And I think we've turned the corner. Don't have nobody in the hospital right now. So we have as of what my last report was. So we've turned the corner on that, and well, I thank God for that, because this is it's a constant worry, because this thing has so many unknowns about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Also want to take this time to remind everybody that we're broadcasting on Sunday mornings, live stream. We've done a Sunday school lesson at 10:15, and then Pastor comes back on at 11:10. So if you didn't catch those, we're also posting those as well. Do you know, I probably should ask this beforehand, but do we know if Nick and Amy, if they are posting the...
They haven't been because of
just
several things going on, and
okay.
The fact that Amy is really overwhelmed in her job right now.
Sure.
But we're trying to get back to that. And as far as our in-house, we're just doing week to week. We're trying to watch what's going on around in other places. I kind of see what the trend is, and we have not many churches, but a couple dealing with some COVID issues right now around the state. And the numbers that are coming in from just the general numbers are really high. They're scary. They're scary somewhat. Sure. And we don't know what the vaccine's going to do. The vaccine's a very slow rollout. And I have no problem how they're rolling out, because I think our frontliners and our people in the nursing homes ought to be able to get it first. And
Sure.
I'll wait my place in line. They say you and I are okay for a few weeks. So,
Yeah, there you go.
we hope I hope so, because like I said, this thing has so many unknowns that we can't. You just don't. You hear about the new variants that been a couple places, and then the things that the fact the way it's going, you hear some little new thing every now and then, or some surprising thing. So we thought it'd be over in the summer. We thought hot weather would kill it. We thought cold weather would kill it. So I don't know. I don't know if the vaccine will kill it. I don't know.
Well, we'll see. Before we get into this, also wanted to remind everybody about your giving opportunities. You can come into the church on Wednesdays from 4 to 7, and then on Fridays at the same time, and then Sundays pretty much most
All
of the
day long, yeah.
all day long on Sundays.
From 9 o'clock to shut down whatever time we leave here.
Sure. So we have an e-giving center, the kiosk out in front. You can use your credit card or whoever's credit card you have. If it'll take it, that's fine. Just kidding. But you can use the e-giving center there. We also have a strong box that you can put your tithes and offering envelope in there as well. Or you can mail in your tithes or offering to the P.O. Box. P.O. Box number is 731, Somerset, Kentucky. Zip code is 42504. I think I get the number.
502.
Yeah, 42502, right?
Right now.
Right now,
Right
42502. Hey, at least I got the P.O. Box
You got
number
4
right.
out of 5 right. That was good.
Yeah, 40502. I don't know why they do that. We got 01 and 03. Why they got to make an 02? I don't like that. But so don't forget about your giving stuff. So with no more further ado, we'll get into I have a question for you.
Okay.
All right. During this time we've been doing live stream from a camera phone on a stand to what we've got to now. Then we went to in-house service, and then of course we got hit with a lot of positive tests and so forth. And now we're going back to the live stream, and we're kind of holding off. How do you think that the all this COVID and with this has affected us as individuals and believers?
Well, it made us think on our feet. Just like I go back to the phone camera that night.
Yeah.
I came in here and I was at a business meeting at another church, and I came in and the phone camera. We had to think on our feet, and it's made us. It's a double-edged sword. It gave us the ability to reach. Some things have been in my heart for years that it was just the financial aspect of it. I would like to have been on what I call the part of the wheel. Somerset's kind of a center. And then the Wayne County, McQuarrie County, and Russell County area, they come to Somerset to do things, to shop and stuff. And I thought it'd be good to reach out to them, through their cable systems and things like that. And I thought about that, but we'd never done it because it's a pretty big financial thing, and I'm not that charismatic as a speaker, and so that wouldn't be able to do as much. But when this happened, we had to do something, and we're using basic technology. It's not really hard, and we're able in a simple way. On the times when Gary couldn't be here, I was sitting at home or in the office over there with my little iPad here, making videos and just trying to keep in communication with people. What we've learned is we knew the importance of keeping the regular sense of communication. Do we want this to be the church of the future? No. We don't want to do that because we'll talk about later probably what COVID has done to us. But sometimes you have to bridge the gap. In foreign countries, they meet with windows with blinds drawn and things. You do what you have to do to get the gospel out.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we've learned. We'll do whatever we got to do to get the gospel out. And our people haven't quit. Nobody just shut the doors and said, "Hey, whenever they let us back in, we'll start back up again." It may be working for businesses. I saw one business here in town. They'd shut down 3 months for a remodel. They opened back up the other day. I drove by and they had cars circling all the way around their building. And I thought, well, they didn't lose any business. Don't look like. But it's a little different in the church sometimes, So,
right.
But I think we've learned to think on our feet, and hey, we're going to do what we got to do to get the gospel out. The thing is, we're just used to in person. I love in person, because I think that's when you have your best results. But we're keeping the connection right here, and I think we've learned to do that to keep the connection.
Yeah, the church has changed.
Yeah.
as ministry, and I think that's something we don't talk about. We talk about the church changing. The ministry is somewhat changing also as we see that. And I know, I don't know how many years ago, it was a few years ago, and you've probably done this a couple of times, but a series on the different types of churches. You talked about a benchmark church, and you had a landmark church. It was a benchmark and a landmark. And
Hallmark.
And Hallmark.
Hallmark, landmark, and benchmark.
But within that, though, you talked about the three markers when a church grows. And you talked about numbers, numerical. You talked about spiritual growth, becoming a more mature Christian, and then, of course, financial growth, building things up. And so when you look at the church, the Heritage Hope Church of God now, moving from Cotter Avenue, and this church is 105 years old now?
105 years old.
105 years old. And so been around a long time, all right? And how do you see this church? I know how you saw this church when we celebrated our 100-year anniversary. How do you see it now? Where are we at within this? And how does that break out today?
Well, we go back to the markers. 5 years ago, I didn't expect this at the 100-year mark, and a year ago, I didn't expect this. We've been in this since March. We've actually been in this 10 months now, as far as us having closed the openings and shuttings. And I look at it from the markers in the church. I look at the numerical markers, and you've heard me preach this. If you've listened to me on Facebook, you've heard this. I said there was a thinning in the church. I honestly believe in my heart that there are people that when the church is able to open back up full blast without separation ropes and things like that, I think there's people not coming back. I don't think they're bad people. I think they kind of like having church at home, or they like just watching church at their leisure, at their convenience. And I would interject here that serving God's never a convenient thing. It requires some sacrifice, but I think it's where it is. And I said, not bad people, just simply the way it's just this has put them in that mode. And I think the church will be thinner. That's not always bad. They tell us that they tell me if I lose weight, I'd feel better and I'd be better. So I don't know if thinner is worse. I do think the good thing is those people who may be thinned out because of this, they know where to come to when there's a crisis.
Sure.
So Tom Raymer said the church has grown off of transfer growth for the last 50 years. So he said there's not as many people to transfer now. So we're going to have to go out and win some souls. So that's a good positive right there. And we've been talking about around here a ministry of one, finding one person that you would like to see one in the kingdom and go after them. And I tell you about the old boy that said, if everybody here wins one in 1 year, just think what it'd be a powerful thing. It'd be bigger than any revival we probably had,
Sure.
So I want to see that. The spiritual growth, it's hard to measure, because I'm only basically having contact with the people that are following us on Facebook or that are coming. We have in-person services. But Kevin, I think I've grown spiritually. I think that I am more concerned. I'm in a place in my ministry where I've got a lot more years behind me than in front of me, but I've become more concerned. I think I'm praying more. I think my focus is on the church. Don't mean I know what to do. I'm just frustrated and I'm groping all the time, just trying to find some answer, something that'll move the needle a little bit. But spiritually, I think it has. I think the people that have just dug in and said that this is just where I am and this is what I've got to do. I've watched you as a teacher, and me and you realize when we come up here, and Brother Nick, when he preaches here, we realize that we're the only connection they may be getting right now.
Right.
They're not getting it in fellowship. They're not getting it in worship. We're the only connection. And man, I mean, that to me, that makes it, that's a serious responsibility.
Well, I hate to jump in, but you're talking about the spiritual growth part of it. And a numbers growth, easy to mark.
You measure numbers. Yeah.
That's easy. And dollars, easy to measure dollars.
I'll
obviously.
talk about that in a minute. But
yeah. And I hate to stop you in the middle of this, but how do you numerically or measure by some sort of barometer the spiritual growth of your congregation, of a church, a group of people?
It's the hardest part because numbers are easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, financial numbers are easy. You take a calculator and do them. And spiritual growth is the hardest thing. And you have to, I measure that in faithfulness of people, and this falls over into your numerical and your financial, but there's really no true way to measure it, because when it comes down to it, your relationship with God is different than mine, kind of.
Sure.
It's very personal. Now, the only thing I can measure is how you incorporate that into the body here.
Sure.
I can't measure what it is when you're in your closet by yourself.
Right.
You can only measure how it's incorporated in the body. And when I see the interaction of the people, I say, well, I can measure. I don't measure spiritual growth by physical manifestations. So we're Pentecostal, we're exuberant in our worship and things like that. But I can't measure that. I'll tell you one thing I measure physical growth by, spiritual growth by, is the people that are still hanging in there. They're still keeping in contact. I told you COVID has separated us. COVID has took our identity, and COVID's tried to separate our spiritual way we identify ourselves spiritually. I've wrote those down, and the third thing is suppressing our ability to express ourselves in worship. And I see people that push through. I ask people to stand on a piece of tape here and worship 10 foot with somebody else, and they done it. They're growing. We're growing. We're doing what we have to do to stay close to God. But I can't measure it in totality. But best way I can do it is in faithfulness, and see the people that when we open the doors back up, they come right back in. And then it flows over into the financial and the numerical as well.
Sure. They say that, and I was just thinking about this when you're talking about the growth of the church, and going back and talking again about the hallmark and the benchmark and landmark. I probably got those in the wrong order that they're supposed to go.
You done good right there. You got them right. You got them just right there.
They tell me that an individual, each person, that we regenerate ourselves every 7 years, right? In fact, people, I've heard that your tastes change every 7 years too. You like a certain food, and then all of a sudden you like something else. You like certain music or things over time. Maybe it changed and matured. My wife liked me pretty good the first 7 years of marriage. The second 7, she didn't like me very much at all. The next 7 weren't great. This 7 seems to be turning out much better. Her tastes have changed, so it's coming back around full cycle. But a body of believers is not unlike an individual.
Right.
And so when I haven't been at this church very long, I guess now it's 2001, so it's been about 7 years, okay? Straight on through, joined and been attending faithfully. But in 7 years' time, there's not a lot of the same people that were here when I started. And over your 25 years? Almost 25 years, you've probably seen at least a 90% turnover and change of people coming through. You've probably seen hundreds of people during that time who attended for a significant amount of time and come back through again. So the church is changing. Those Heritage Hope may be 105 years old. The congregation is not that old. Where would you, forgetting about Heritage Hope's hallmark or benchmark significance in the history of Church of God and in this community, this group, this body of believers, where would you put us at in that marking at this time?
It would be hard to pinpoint where I would put us at. I would say that I had never thought about it. I hadn't heard that study that you gave us now, but the 7-year thing. But that sounds pretty good there, and that would mark about almost 4 changes through my ministry, which is pretty much on target. And what as I think about this, I think about the phases we've been through here, and I've seen the church go through phases. We should go through the phases of revival, where we want to see a move of God. We went through phases of music change. We went through phases of all these things. I want to see that. But what I see is the ability. Now, this is one thing I'm proud of our church in: the ability to adapt to the season.
Yeah.
And I think our church has adapted to this season pretty good. whether it's a core of us carrying on the ministry because people can't be here, all of us here together. People stepping in to volunteer just to take temperatures, do things on Sunday morning. They stepped in, things we never thought we'd have to do. And we've adapted the season. But I think what the biggest thing where we are now, I think, and again, I don't know about the time frames of change, but I think we have adapted here in one way, that we have come to appreciate what we do have.
Yeah.
Hey, we took this for granted. Church was always taken for granted by me. It was just there. And now we've realized that how fragile things can be in life. And so what we have looked at this and say, hey, maybe we can't do what we want. I've referenced as a scrum around the altar or something. We can't do that right now. If we're wise, we don't do that. But we still have the love is good. The love and the peace and the joy of the Lord is still evident in the body of the people. The hunger for the Word when they sit on these pews, because those people are here, and it's amazing that I see that. So I think the great thing the church has learned to adapt to the changing of the seasons. Where we are compared to other churches, the worst thing that Paul even says, he says we compare ourselves to ourselves. We're not wise.
Right.
The worst thing in the world is we will compare ourselves to somebody down the road when we ought to be saying, God, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
What's your will for me? What's your purpose for my life? How can I get 1 or 2 or 3 people saved? Let's start getting people saved. Let's stop worrying about who has the best music, who has the best preacher, who has the prettiest facility, who has the biggest facility, and who has this and who has that, and who done this and who done that. And let's get into saying, hey God, let's get in your will. And I think maybe in this time He's teaching us that. He's teaching us that we can still be effective, that we can still minister. COVID didn't kill ministry.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it's made us readjust. We'll probably be better when it's over. But we've learned how to adapt. And those things we had to do. And the third thing, we talked about a while ago, and I'll get back to this so we don't want to run out of time or bore the people to death. But the third growth, the marker was finances.
Right.
And we had, a few years ago, we got a kiosk. We didn't know we needed a kiosk or not, I even know a guy sitting within 10 foot of me that didn't know whether we need a kiosk or not, who uses a kiosk now. I've never used the kiosk.
Well, they got tired of me bouncing checks.
But I've never used the kiosk because I'll probably write checks till the day I die. That's just me. But we had to adapt. We had the kiosk, and we paid plans to put a new sound system in because we wore the other one out, and we put off as long as we could. Doggone, we really needed it. What we done, we needed it. It came in handy, and we learned quick. Well, we had a website, but we didn't get a lot of activity on our website, and we'd let it kind of drag. So we had to re-up our website where people could use it, things like that. And what happened was, because we realized something that I preach here in this church, I preach about finances. And I keep it before the people. And I know I've heard everything about all you preachers think about is money and this and that. I've heard all that. But what you told me one night when I was kidding you, you reminded me of what I said. You said money moves ministry. And it takes money to move ministry. So one of the first things you have when you're having to shut down your church, how you going to move ministry? Yeah. There's things that go on here, Kevin. We have to keep the heat on to a certain level here. We have to do certain things. The church blesses me and takes care of me, and we have to do those things. But there have to be ways. So what our people done? They adapted to the kiosk. They adapted to putting a strong box out there and dropping by when the doors are open. They adapted to mailing in their finances. And what I was proud of is the growth here. Our church closed out this last year. We've got financial statements. Anybody wants to come by when the doors are open, get a financial statement for the end of the year. The last quarter will show where we're sitting right now. Our church just really done a good job to where I thought we would be. Now I will say that initially when COVID hit, there was a push and people want to make sure that, and they jumped in. But then the giving process thinned too. And the numbers of giving units decreased in the church. And I don't know how to explain this, but the finance increased, not a whole lot, but it increased enough to keep it good and stable. And we closed out a whole lot better than we did the year before. And and there's not been that big a reduction in things as far as the things, but we was able to close out. And I think that's what people have to understand, the importance. I go to the bank every week, put my money in the bank. And I trust the bank to have my money there when I want it. The financial system of God is a little different. God designated the church as a storehouse for finances, for the tenth and the offering. He designated the church for that. And then he said, if you will be faithful in that and bringing your tithe. He said, you've robbed me with tithe and offering. But he said, you bring your tithe to the storehouse.
Right.
There'll be meat in my house. I like meat in the house.
Yeah.
There'll be meat in my house. And prove me herewith, if I'll not open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that you'll not be able to receive it. And he talked about how the vine, he talked about how your corn and your wheat wouldn't come in the same. Your corn and probably wheat were associated the same in the Bible, but your corn and your other crop wouldn't come in at the same time, where you didn't have the manpower to get one crop in. You'd lose in the field. Your vine won't cast forth its fruit in the field. He talked about what he would do, and he said, all nations will call you blessed. And I think there's a tremendous testimony to the world that the church, so some people have lost their jobs. We understand, and that's the beautiful thing about the tithing system. It's fair.
Yeah.
If you're not blessed, you don't do it. If you don't get increase, then you don't do it. You've heard me say here, nobody pays more tithes than anybody else. We pay 1/10. We pay a percentage. It's percentage giving. But I think the world's saying, hey, the church is still functioning. The church should be the one that's losing, because the people ought to forget, let's not give to the church. Let's take care of my bills. Let's take care of my needs. Let's take care of this. But we're seeing a spirit of generosity come out of the people. We see the people saying, hey, I'm going to be obedient to the word of God no matter what.
Right. The church is going to prevail.
Yeah. And we said,
if you didn't watch this morning in his sermon, you watch it. And as I was sitting out there by myself, my usual seat where I always sit, unless somebody comes along in a funeral and sits in my seat, I was sitting there, what I thought about? You talk about the gates of hell, and we talked about, I did this in my lesson this morning a little bit, but you talked also about the fact that the gate of the city was where the decisions were made. And that's where the dignitaries got together and the people in power and into this, and they would make their decrees and judgments on things. And in this world, this world here is Satan's kingdom.
Yeah.
But the decisions that are made here do not reign in church. Yeah. Okay? The church will prevail. So the devil and he will have his time. But it will not prevail over the church. Mm-hmm. God will still have his way.
And that's where we said one thing early on. We've not been said a whole lot here lately, but I said we're as good in the church at helping people live. We give food to people that come by, and we put gas in their car, and we pay rent, we pay electric bills, and we're good to tell them how to live. But we don't get people ready to die. Yeah. And the churches, we faced it that hey, we've run into something that we can't always handle, and so we need to have people ready to leave this running. We need to keep giving here. We talk about our ministries. The mission, the ministry of the missionary, the World Missions Ministry, has to be supported, and people are doing that here. Every month I get money, or money will come in and say this is for World Missions, and we're able to get that out. And we support our World Missions through Cleveland, Tennessee, and then there's a group over. A friend of mine here in Kentucky, Don Chavis, is the World Missions rep for Europe's Child. We think about Africa's child. Yeah. And we think about India and Asia's child. We don't think about Europe's child. We look at Europe as a more cultural place. But especially in Eastern Europe, he has really been doing a fantastic job. We're able to help him with that, plus helping our world missions. And then the evangelists. I'll tell you what, the evangelists just lost their livelihood.
Right.
And people here have been so good to drop $1 here and $1 there, and we're helping the evangelists. And then God's Food Pantry over here in town, just drive by and see the line. There's a need. And we've been able to help that. It makes me feel so good to drop by there and hand them a check for a couple $100, maybe $1,000. It just really makes me feel good to do that. And then, of course, Home for Children's in my heart. And last year, we revived the old penny march.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I learned how to give. They put a penny in my hand, my dad did, and I put it in the penny march. And we decided to have a penny march. Remember when we couldn't be here for Mother's Day, and we had Father and Mother's Day on Father's Day, and we set a wash tub out here, and we brought coffee cans full of change and buckets full of change, and people dropped some $100 bills, some big checks in there, and we gave I think $3,100 to the Home for Children. Only about a fifth of that was change, but people opening up their heart. I remember my sisters came in from my home church. They laid out of church that day and came up here and come in packing coffee cans full of change. And our church was able to give, for our size church, we gave a considerable amount of money to the Home for Children last year. And I'm so proud of them. We're going to do it again this year. So I'll get this plug in right here.
Sure.
Put that change in your coffee cans around Mother's Day. We're going to set the wash tub back out here, and we're going to have the penny march, and we're going to drop our change in there, and we're going to also ask people not to pollute it with 1 and 10s and 5s and 20s and 50s, but only $100 bills, and drop them in there. And I'm sure the church will want to contribute a little just from its general fund. And that's how we're doing it. Listen, we're not going to. One thing the church needs to learn is we're not going to win the world a city at a time.
That's right.
We're going to win the world a person at a time.
Yeah.
And it may be what we send to the home for children that a preacher like Benny Triplett that raised up out of that home down there might raise up to win many people into the kingdom of God. We may feed a kid over here in the food pantry that knows churches give stuff and just drop by here because they said the church was good to me. Somewhere on the mission field, we're going to help somebody, and the evangelist is going to go out away from here. They're going to lead somebody. Lord, we're not going to meet. We get to heaven.
Yep.
And so that's where the church. I think we talk about what the future of the church is going to be.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. We've talked about where the church is now, how this last year has gone through. We looked at the cycles of the church and so forth. So, what is the future of the church? We have the shadow of COVID hanging over us. What do you think that's going to be like?
I think the future of the true church. Maybe a thin church, maybe be a church that maybe don't have all the bells and whistles that it had, but I think that the future of the church is good. I read something today. It really intrigued me, and I'd read it before, but it just really stirred me. It said that that he would be the rock that he would build his church on, and the gates of hell will not prevail. And I would say tonight, no, they won't.
That's right.
No, they won't. No, they won't. So I don't know exactly what the future holds, but I believe that God still has a remnant. In the year Uzziah died, he saw also the Lord.
Yeah.
And when you read down at that, we get to the part that we preach the first part. Then we preach it pretty good where he says, "Here am I, send me." But he said, "Until the city be waste without inhabitant, till the land is left desolate." And he basically said, it'll only be a remnant, but they'll be there.
That's right.
They'll be there. And the church will be here. They may take our buildings. They may take our tax exemptions. They may do everything they can to slow down the church. But they'll close our buildings. They may bulldoze our buildings down, but the church will meet in somebody's house.
That's right.
So church will meet in somebody's basement. The church will learn how to communicate without a word, as the sign of the fish that come when in the early church when they couldn't communicate about the Lord. They had the staff in their hand, and when they stopped to talk in general talk, a man would just draw the sign of the fish on the ground.
Wow. And
he knew he was talking to a Christian. The church will survive because the church was built to survive. The church thrives on a promise that I preached about this morning, that the gates of hell won't prevail against it. Hell will always be here. It's the eternal place.
Yeah.
But it will not prevail ever. It will not outlast the church.
No.
It may last as long as we're in heaven. It'll be hell. But it will not crush the church under its feet. Yeah. The gates of hell. No, they won't. No, they won't. The state of the church is I wish a lot of things, but I've learned to love the church more. I've learned to appreciate. I always love the church. Is always dear to me. Is always a place. Even when I was out in sin, that I knew I was going to go to one day. But I'm going to tell you what. I've come to appreciate the church. Come to appreciate the church. Come to appreciate the people that love the church when they can't be in the house.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here in a sanctuary that will seat almost 400 people. And there's 3 of us here. There were 3 of us here this morning.
Yeah.
But I love the church.
Well, I think we're about done.
We're about right on time.
I think that's about right on time. Want to thank everybody for joining us tonight with the round table. Want to remind everybody We talked earlier about the different ways of giving, so be sure to do that. Just keep an ear out and watch on Facebook for any announcements we're going to have
Sure,
for
yeah.
upcoming services and so forth. Be sure to tune in Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. Pastor's going to be continuing his family training hour. We're going to continue in
Talk about covenant.
talking about covenant. So
The truth,
the
which
truth.
is covenant's currency.
Covenant's currency. So tune in for that. And anything else?
Yeah, I want to say, Kevin, and I probably need to look at the camera at this. I don't like this season, but I appreciate the opportunity to minister to this church in this season. And I appreciate the support of the church that, I don't know the rumblings, but as far as I know, the decisions we've had to make have had almost 100% support across the body of the church. And people don't know, well, I said and I weigh what I'm going to do what we're going to do next week. And I have to talk to our council and we make decisions. But the opportunity to pastor this people, who I consider the greatest body of believers on the face of this earth, the opportunity God give me. I repeat the verse I've used for kind of our main verse here at this church for almost 25 years. The lines have fallen to me in pleasant places. Yeah. I have a goodly heritage. Your heritage is, maybe we look at it in two ways: what we had, but it's also what we receive.
Right.
And I thank God for the heritage of His church.
Amen.
And I love everybody out there.
Well, we love you. Well, thank you again, everybody, for joining us tonight. God bless you.